Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Health Evolution Collective. Today, I am here with the lovely Dawn Robinson, who
That's
is
right.
the author of Ditch Your Midlife Stress from the Inside Out. It's time to start living with more ease. And a fabulous book title, as I'm sure you'll agree. And there's so much in this book that I want to talk about. But welcome, Dawn. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
It's so lovely to finally meet you. You know, a lot of my guests on my podcast have, we've connected on Instagram or, some sort of social media. So it's lovely to actually get to talk to you. And of course, it's in the morning in the UK over there and probably cold.
very, very cold. I've got my blanket on my knees. Yes.
Well, I won't tell you that it's like been 25 today and beautiful.
Oh, right,
and
okay.
sunny anyway, we can't control the weather anyway, can we?
No.
So do you want to start with sharing with everyone a little bit about what it is that you do, Dawn?
Yeah, so I'm a coach, particularly for midlife women. And particularly, I seem to be talking a lot about stress at the moment. So that's what I do. I work one-to-one, but I've also run workshops locally. And I used to be an HR manager and management trainer. So that sort of is in my background that I've done in the past. So I'm hoping to do more of that soon.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
So what was your kind of journey into, I suppose, more the coaching side of it, and then, leading on to writing, a book all about stress?
Yeah, well, if I think back, it's quite frightening. 30 years, I started in training, working in the training department, and I was running courses on stress, which was really funny because I was a really shy, introverted, anxious person. And here I was charged with running some courses on stress. So I started looking at all the sort of techniques that were available at the time, and sort of my interest in NLP and psychology was always there, and that sort of grew. And so I did that for sort of 15 years. And then I retrained to be an Alexander Technique teacher, which was wonderful. So I was working one-to-one, and that was really, really good fun. And my husband was in the Air Force at the time, so we moved quite a lot around the country. And I'd set up a business, but I had my daughter when I was 41, so quite late deciding whether to have her or not. So that happened quite quickly. Then we moved, and then I didn't seem to have a business anymore. And I'd become this mother full-time, which was lovely. And then we moved, and I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any support. And I just noticed, I think I was probably by this time sort of late 40s, I started to feel really invisible. And I don't think anyone knew that I was just really unhappy and really stressed, but I was waking up in the night thinking about world events and things that might happen, and just became more and more anxious and stressed. And this went on for maybe a couple of years, actually. And I was always searching, as I had throughout my whole life, for answers. I'd done all sorts of things. I'd studied all different techniques, paths, and I was just really curious, but always wasn't satisfied with the answers that I got. Until probably about 3 years ago, I came across a book that I was reading, and she was talking about how she transformed her mind really by reading Michael Neill's book. I think it was The Inside Out Revolution. And I thought, oh, that sounds a good book. I'll get a copy of that. Went onto my Kindle and realised that I bought it the year previously. And I'd suddenly remembered that I'd read it, but I'd sort of thought, nah, put it to one side, not for me. So I thought, well, I'll have a go at rereading this. And I reread it. I thought, my goodness, this is just incredible. And so that was my journey into this understanding in the 3 principles. And I just couldn't get enough of it from then on. So I was Googling and watching YouTube videos, and I was like, I need more of this stuff, buying books, a shed load of books were arriving every day because I just love to read. And so gradually this started to seep into me, really, without me having to do anything. So gradually I was thinking, well, I want to learn more and I want to do more. And so there's a woman in the UK called Nicola Bird who runs A Little Peace of Mind, which is helping people who are anxious. And suddenly I saw this invite. She wanted people to train with her to be mentors and go out into the community probably once or twice a month and have meetups with people and just talk about this understanding and anxiety and stress. And so I signed up, I did it, I loved it. And I went out once a month, meeting all sorts of people, lots of people with really difficult problems. You know, I would sit there thinking, I don't know why I'm stressed, because these people have got some really bad problems, you know, but we just chat about it. And I was just so blown away by people's wisdom very often, you know, people that you'd look at them and you think, how am I going to help them? And they just come out with this amazing, beautiful insight. And just often us chatting and me saying, you know, you've got this. It's that was all they needed to hear, that they were thinking along the right lines. So, yeah, so then I just started chatting to people about it. I wouldn't even call it coaching formally at the time. It was just chatting to people. And so I wanted more training. And this year I've just completed a 9-10 month program with Jules and Rudy Kennard. And Rudy was someone who came across this understanding probably about 15 years ago. So he's trained, he's met a lot of people. He trained with Sydney Banks as well. And so here I am. And then last year I wrote a book about stress. I started writing it, gave it to my husband to have a look through because he's quite good at proofreading and being analytical. He took it apart. COVID started. I put the book to one side and that was it for a few months. So it's just been, that's my journey really. And then I started writing again. I took it back up again because I thought COVID's here, might as well sit here and write. Rewrote lots of it and then just went on and self-published it. So yeah, that's the journey in a nutshell, Tracy.
Oh, wow. Okay, there's quite a few things in there that I'd love to sort of unpick with you. But firstly, you know, I've certainly talked to practitioners that I guess either, you know, coach in some way out of the 3 principles, and you know, I do as well. And but there would be people listening. You know, I have quite a broad network of people that do listen, because health, you know, can mean many things, and sometimes it's nutrition and sometimes it's other things. And but for the people listening who don't know what the 3 principles are, and I'm sure by the end of this conversation they're going to be doing what you and I did, which is a massive search. And I have books arriving every day as well.
Yes, I am.
My husband's like, oh, it's another book.
Another one. Yes.
But could you, maybe just explain, in a nutshell, what the 3 principles is and what you saw?
Yeah. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but in a nutshell, there was a man called Sydney Banks who was a Scottish welder, lived in Canada in the 1970s, and he suddenly had this profound insight or realization about where our experience of life comes from. So for me, what this is all about is we have these experiences, and what the 3 principles does for me is it explains how we create experience, how the mind works, how the human mind works, so that we're living in our life, seeing the world, interacting with the world, and it's how we make sense of that. And the other part that's really important for me is that we're not isolated units going around doing our thing in the world. We're part of a greater whole, and that we're always connected. So for me, what I've come to see over the past year particularly is that those 2 things, understanding where our experience is coming from, and it's sort of thinking about thought, which I can talk more about in a minute, but understanding that's where our experience comes from, understanding that we are connected, whatever spiritual background you come from. So I started off being quite religious as a small child, going to Sunday school, but then I became more of this sort of, it's about the universe. So New Age years, perhaps seems a bit outdated, that term now, but that was where I went, you know. So it doesn't matter what spiritual background you got, but all of us, I think, particularly in times of struggle or profound times in our life, we have that sense that what we see isn't all there is. There's something else about us. There's some soul, something that connects us. And yeah, so those 2 things, I hope that's made that clear. That's really what the 3 principles is for me all about.
Yeah. Sorry.
So I was going to say, so what I think about the second part of your question, what I've seen, I think when I got myself into a real state in my late 40s, I was believing everything that my thinking was telling me. So I was having all these thoughts about who I was, which wasn't all that great a lot of the time, what I needed to be worried about and concerned. And I believed everything those thoughts had told me, because I'd come from a background where it's all about believing your intuition. And if an idea pops into your head, it's telling you something really, really important, and you need to explore it. And it's probably telling you something about your background or your past, or something that could happen that you need to make sure you've analysed thoroughly to make sure it doesn't happen. So I'd got myself into this twist, really, that I was believing everything that my thoughts told me, and I was getting more and more caught up in a real knot of thoughts. And so what I've really seen with this conversation is that actually thoughts aren't personal. They sort of come in and they come out, and I don't have to pay them any attention at all. I don't have to analyze them. I don't have to look at them and find out where they came from and think about what I need to do about them. I just need to let them go. Now, I suppose that sounds really, really bonkers, really, but from that, so much more falls into place. And it's an incredible experience you find over time when you're not paying so much attention to your thoughts, whatever they're about. Your mind becomes a lot quieter. You notice insights and wisdom that is probably quite useful and that has a different quality to it. It's not I've got to do something about this, because it's not fearful. It's just this is the next step to take. It's sort of a quiet intuition. So yeah, in a nutshell, what I've seen is that thoughts don't have to believe. And from that, loads of other things have fallen into place that have just made my life a hell of a lot easier than it used to be. And it's profound. It's actually quite simple, but it's profound, and it creates a beautiful experience of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen that too. And, I think what potentially when we first kind of hear this, it's our thoughts that are probably going to go, oh, that doesn't sound right. That's what our brain does. Right.
Yeah.
And, I think it's, seeing the amazing way our brain works, but just kind of not being tripped up by it so much. And I love how you say that true wisdom is a different quality. Because I sometimes get asked, how do I know then? How do I know when it is my gut, my wisdom, or my gut, or my inner GPS, or whatever, or my thought? And it's kind of like, well, you do just know. It does feel very different. And, often it'll come up, but then we'll have a whole lot of thinking on top of it. So, we might miss it or we might not see it, but it's seeing that if we can, sort of put holes in all of that, it will become a lot more clearer to us. And all we've got to do is kind of put full stops, next at the end of it, and it does kind of give us some sort of sign. So, I think if you're sitting here and you're listening to this and, it feels a little uncomfortable, well, I would say too, but that's okay. We can still learn and see new things in life and sit in a little bit of discomfort. And that's very, very normal. So, stay with us and keep listening, because it has profoundly changed my life as well. And the many women I've been really grateful to be able to share it with too. And I think it's just one of those things I say to my clients every day, there is always more to see. And I can't wait for the rest of my life to be able to see more every day, there's always more to see.
Yeah, I love what you said about, the wisdom has a different quality, and we see it when the mind is quieter, which is why, when people think about the creative ideas that they have, they're often when they're in the shower or when they're out walking the dog or doing something really mundane, when maybe their mind is a little bit quieter, and then they get this sudden, I ought to phone someone, or that would be a good idea to do. And it suddenly comes, it's there. It seems to come out of nowhere. And like you say, it has a gentle quality to it. It's not, if you don't do this, your whole life's going to fall apart. It's just, this is the next step to take.
And that's another big thing I think that's important, that your whole life will fall apart, that underlying theme of the principles being, that we have innate well-being and we have innate wellness, and we're conditioned to live our life as if we're incomplete, and that we have to live a life in a certain way to become complete, whereas this is saying, well, actually you are complete, so you can live your life and just suck the juice out of it and just let your life take you where it's going to take you. And write a book.
I know. Well, there are a couple of things that come out of what you just said, because I used to be such a believer in personal development, and I'd sit down in the morning and I'd do my meditation and write gratitude journals and visualize goals. And I mean, there was such a long list, it would take me an hour in the morning to do that, because I felt that I had to do something to improve who I was. And if I didn't, I was never going to achieve anything. And so to realize now that actually who I am is perfect, as everyone is perfect, that we're doing the best we can and we're human, it takes a lot of the weight off. I don't look at self-development books anymore. I don't need to. I can see that in the moment I'm doing my best, and that's all I can do. And there was something else that you said that it's gone out of my mind, actually.
See how thought works.
Yeah, it will come back. The other thing I'd say is that this is a descriptive psychology, a way of being. So we're not saying you have to do X, Y, and Z to find this. It's just when you see something, when you understand that, I don't know, Father Christmas doesn't arrive, your whole perception of Christmas changes. You don't have to do anything to sort of make sure that belief stays in place. It just is there. So once you've seen how experience works, things just shift, and you don't have to think, right, well, I need to just revisit that every day, because something has happened. You've changed fundamentally without having to work and repeat that process.
Yeah, I love that. I'm actually in the middle of a 5-week online course. It's my first course where I'm not. It's all fundamentally the principles, teaching how we work. And one of the ladies said to me on Monday night that, she's like, I really am struggling a little bit with what you're saying, because I've spent my whole life, for me personally and with my clients, teaching them or setting goals. So we set goals, we reach them, and then it's kind of like, oh, what's next? So we go and we set more goals. And she said, I see that doesn't work. I can really see where I am now in my life that is a lot of hard work, and not necessarily what we need to do. But what do I do instead? Like stuck in that whole, so what do I do? And I said, well, I can't tell you what to do, because I don't know how that's going to look for you. So my job is to show you how it works, and then it will come in within, it will come up in you. You will see it. And they're kind of, I'm sorry, it doesn't answer your question. I know, but I remember that too in the beginning, because Dr. Amy Johnson was the first lady that.
Yeah, I love
it. She was my first introduction to her. And I remember, I don't know, listening to one of her things when, that came up, and, and she is about, well, if we don't do tools and techniques, what do we do? Because people think, if it's doing nothing, then it just doesn't make sense, So I was like, yeah, it took me a little while to get my head around that too. What would be some insight you would have around that?
Well, it's not to do with stress, actually. I was thinking, as you were talking, more about how to grow a business is something that I set goal after goal after goal that never seemed to get me any closer to setting up this brilliant business that I wanted to create. But what I've seen recently and more is that, it's like the book, that idea came out of nowhere. I sort of wrote it. I was getting up last year at sort of 5 o'clock in the morning, writing for an hour. It was just flowing out. I had no plan, no structure. It just came out. And then obviously there was rewriting after that. So that was an idea that came from my goal of, I want to create a business. So, but I didn't sort of think, right, well, I'm going to write a book, and then I will self-publish it, and then I will sell 20,000 copies in the first week, and then I will do this and this and this. It's just, I shall write a book, I shall self-publish it, I shall type, the idea, because all the proceeds are going to a charity, that idea again popped into my mind because a dear friend in the village supports the charity. I thought, right, I'll do that. So from that, other things have come. And then ideas just pop into my mind, I'll talk about it on Instagram. And then I sort of connect with you through that. I can't predict that. I can't see that's coming, but I just take the impetus of the thought that comes into mind. I take the action. I don't think about it too much. I don't think, well, probably no one's going to like my book, and goodness, if my mother reads my book, this is going to be really embarrassing, you know, and I don't think about any of that. I just take this next step. And so goals seem much more, they seem irrelevant. I mean, I've got a big goal to grow a business or to have a good life, but that's fine. But in a way, if that doesn't happen either, I'm less committed to that, really. In a way, I sort of see that however life unfolds, it's almost like life has a plan for each of us, and we can have our wishes and our desires, and that's perfect, and we can work towards those. But in a sense, life takes us on its own path, whether we like that or not. It's sort of going with what seems to be happening in the moment. And I know many people will think, well, that's very different to how our cultures see life. And I know that. I know people might be thinking that's just crazy, but it's not about giving up. It's not about saying, well, I'm just going to sit and let life happen to me. But it's noticing what's happening in the moment and responding to that and taking the next step after the next step. It's more of a flowing through life rather than trying to push it in the direction that we want it to go. It's like going with the stream of life rather than building a few dams along the way and trying to make it go over, 3 miles to the west. It's a lot less stressful, and it's a lot easier to live like this. Does that make sense, Tracy? Does that sort of?
Well, it makes complete sense to me, and I think if it doesn't, if it's a little bit confusing to those listening, that's okay. And I think it's seeing what I've seen around that too is that it is when you're in the flow, you are more in the flow of life. And I don't think my output in life has ever been greater than it has since I understood this.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
What you're saying about, well, it's not like, I think we have a misunderstanding or a whole lot of thinking around that if we're not setting goals and setting targets and doing stuff like that, then we won't do anything. But it just doesn't work like that.
No.
Does it? Yeah. And I think it opens up so much of what we have, what's held us back around our thinking and our belief systems and all these things we think about who we are and what we're capable of. Actually, you know what? That kind of just gets swept aside, and we show up and are capable of, and we'll constantly see that we can do so much more than we ever thought we could.
Well, I think there's two parts to it, Tracy. I think because your mind's quieter, you get the insights quicker. You get this is the next step, or this would be a good idea. That comes to your mind much more vividly. So you have that. But absolutely, like you say, I used to, if I'd written this book 3 years ago, I would have spent an awful lot of time thinking about who am I to write a book? Who on earth is going to want to write a book that I'm writing? I haven't got a PhD in stress management, so really should I be the person writing this? That's gone. I don't waste time, like you're saying. You don't need to waste your time with that. It just, you get on with it. And so your mind isn't distracted as much. So your mind is much more focused in an easy way. And so, like you say, you just get so much more done. And then you've got time to go off and have long walks and enjoy your life. Without feeling got to slog away at it,
Yep. And it's so true that the happiness that is available, or the good feelings that, are out there, they're more obvious. We see things we've never seen before. And I love that. I was going to say, how you were just on that thing about goals. And, I think sometimes we tie our well-being, obviously to things, those goals and to things outside. And then if we don't meet them, we think that means something about who we are. And of course, that's a misunderstanding. But I remember watching one of Nicola Bird's YouTube videos, and she talked about how she had all her goals. And, one a big one was to make the first million.
Yes,
and
I remember her talking.
Talked about how, well, she got there, but hey, she was nothing. Well, woohoo, like it just didn't bring her what she thought it was going to bring her.
Yeah, and that's sort of thinking about, I've got these goals, but what's the underlying reason? Is it because I want to prove something to myself or other people, or I want to achieve something that will make me feel better? Or is it because there's a creative force of me that wants to bring this book forth, and out it comes? That's a different end goal. Books are created, paintings are painted, businesses are created because we want to, as humans, we want to be creative. We want to express ourselves and show the world who we are as individuals, not in any ego sense, but because it's sort of it's like a bird singing, isn't it? Or a flower showing its bloom. It does it because that's part of who it is, not because it wants to let all the other birds think what a wonderful singer that bird is, or it's just because it's a creative force that comes through and you need to express it rather than I want to create this goal so that I can have X, Y, Z.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, can we talk a little bit more about your book? So, obviously, the topic is stress,
Yeah.
and we've touched a little bit on that in terms of the three principles and what you've seen on that. But how would you like to talk? Would you like to share, maybe a little bit of the content of the book, or I know I'd like to have a chat to you around, stress and something like COVID that I know that we're all still living in, and what you've seen around that. What would you like to talk about
Shall I
next?
talk about COVID? Because that is,
Yeah.
it's been a stressful time for many people, and yet.
Mm.
So obviously, I was writing this book about stress, and I have to say, hand on heart, I probably had about 20 minutes in all the months worrying about COVID. I mean, I suddenly had this thought, is my daughter going to get it? And this was before we realized that children were sort of reasonably, on the whole, stayed healthy. What if my daughter gets it? What if something happens to her? So I was able to witness those thoughts and then sort of observe them as thoughts, and that was fine. So the rest of the whole time, I have to say, and I know many people have suffered, so I don't say this lightly, but I did have a good COVID experience, the whole lockdown thing.
Mm.
I haven't been touched personally by it, so I do appreciate that for many people it's been really difficult financially, health-wise. But for many people who haven't been touched directly by it, who've just been in lockdowns, and I don't mean just me, but they have been in lockdowns, I know that many people in that situation have experienced a lot of anxiety and stress. And so for me, it just came back to, where does my experience of COVID comes from? If I'm not seeing it in front of me directly, where does it come from? It comes from thinking that I have. And so much of the thinking that we have that makes us stressed is thinking about the future. What happens if I get it? What happens if my husband gets it? What if the whole country goes to ruin? What happens if no one can get toilet rolls? What happens if it's all about this, what's going to happen in the future? And so my thinking naturally, as I've become aware of this understanding, but during COVID as well, was, what do I need to do right now? Oh, I need to go to the shops with my mask and queue up and make sure I've got the provisions that we need for the next week. What do I need to do now? It was always that next step. It wasn't worrying about, should the government have provided more protective gear for the NHS, or should people have done this? It was just, what do I need to do now? And I know that probably doesn't give comfort to people who've been through a lot of stress, but it just seemed to me that this was a really good example of, there's a COVID experience globally, and it means one thing to one person, but it can mean so many other things to other people. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean we're stressed, we're anxious. It can mean so many different things. And when it doesn't mean stress to us, we just live our life with it going on in the background.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting how you said, I suppose it's just that understanding of when we know how it works. And I've had a very similar experience in Melbourne. I mean, we've had the second toughest lockdown in the world here.
Right.
And I know that 6 months of lockdown was very tough on everyone. And I had my days too, when I was in a bit of a low mood, and, 4 kids homeschooling, and, we all have moments where we'll go up into our head a little bit. But I think it is just that understanding that this is what it is. This is just how we work. Now, there's always room to see more, and seeing where our anxieties and our worries are coming from is a really big part of that. And, there's no right or wrong, but there's just always more to see. And, stress, we know, can impact us, our health, and, and But I think what I've seen from you and what I've read in the book and what I've sort of understand around stress is there's a lot more to see, and it can be optional.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things I want to pick
I
up
know.
from that. So I just feel I need to write notes. The first one is that when we get into, if I got stressed about COVID, the couple of times that I didn't beat myself up about it. I didn't think, I just thought, we all have low moods. We have weather in our mind, and sometimes it's sunny and sometimes there's a bit of a storm going on. And when we can accept that and know that it's part of being human, it just sort of comes through. So I didn't feel, when I was worried about my daughter getting COVID, that I needed to Google, potential risks to 13-year-olds. I didn't need to do any of that because I knew that it would just pass the less I fiddled with it. And so that was wonderful. But the other thing that you said about there's so much more to see about stress, think about the nutrition. We used to believe that fat was really, really bad for us. No one should ever be seen eating an avocado. And now, as we understand more, we see that there are fats that are good for you. Olive oil, avocado, it's really good for your body to eat that sort of thing. So I think there's a similar shift that needs to happen with stress, because I think so many people think, if I get stressed, this is really going to affect my health and this is going to kill me. But to see that actually stress can be a positive force, and I owe my understanding for that to the woman that I mentioned in the book, Dr. Kelly. I can't remember her name. She wrote a brilliant book. I should have had it next to me. I talk about it in the book a lot. She's basically a psychologist who's done a lot of work at Harvard, and she used to teach people about the dangers of stress. That's right. Yeah. Yes. The upside of stress. That's right.
Yes. I
Kelly
screenshotted that page because I have to get that book.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. When I read this, so, she's the scientist. She's the one who's done all the research that I could then use for my book. But basically what she's saying is that she taught that stress is really harmful to people for years, until she saw this study that, I can't remember the details because it's a bit like, but basically, if you believe stress is bad for you, it's going to do harm to you. If you realize that stress is just one of those things that's going to give you a bit more oomph and adrenaline to really focus on what needs to be done and give you that bit of a sort of kick up the body to get going, then it's a positive thing. And physiologically, that makes a difference to your body. So if you're concerned about stress, if you're in that fight flight mode, the blood vessels constrict, and that over time leads to inflammation and all the dangers that we all know about. But if you see stress as a positive thing, and that that you have the resources to deal with it, the blood vessels stay open. It's a bit like experiencing joy. You have that sort of rush of, it's almost excitement rather than fear. And that's how I've started to experience stress myself now, that I know that as humans, we all have unlimited potential. We all have incredible resources, incredible creativity. And so when I'm in stressful situations, I've begun to trust more and more that I can find a way out of it, that I can figure something out. So in a way, it's sort of, I have a stressful situation, I don't get fearful, I'm just with the situation, and things pop into my mind. The next action comes into mind. So for example, last year, I talk about this in the book, my husband was out of work for 5 months. Now, normally that would have sent me into a panic of not being able to sleep, hardly eating, but I relaxed through that. And then one day I thought, I think we need to phone the insurance company and just let them know. So we did. And they said, you can have a 3-month mortgage holiday. You're entitled to that. And that was just an amazing thing to happen to us. It took a lot of the financial pressure off. And I had another thought, and it just happened. And then eventually my husband got another job, and that was fine. It was just, I wasn't lying in bed stressing, if I get stressed, this is going to kill me and I'm going to get a migraine or have a stroke. Or it's giving me a bit more energy to come up with good ideas and to take action, and to have a bit more sort of impetus to get on the phone and talk to people and do stuff. It was a firing up of me in a positive way.
Yeah. I love how you've talked about that. And I think that is the innocent misunderstanding that we kind of have, that, again, that we lack something,
Yeah, and there's no no blame about that. No blame attached to people with that.
no,
No.
it's I didn't know until someone pointed it out to me a few years ago. Wish I'd known, what's
Yeah.
Jack
Yeah.
Crancy's book, Somebody Should Have Told Me,
Yes. Yeah.
somebody, wish someone had, but that's okay. I know now. um, that I've completely lost my train of thought too, but yes, that we're lacking, but we're not. Resilience is in us, it's there,
Yeah.
and we can tap into it so much more when we're not all up in our head and overthinking and imagine scenarios and things that we just don't know if they're going to happen. They might, but if they do, they will be dealt with. And this is the thing too with the understanding that it's not, we constantly are on the lookout for this path to true happiness, that we'll always be happy all the time, that we'll never feel anything, but it's not that at all. That emotions are, the full range of emotions, they're only, it's how we judge them really as to what they are. And there's so much to be seen in that. And it reminds me of Dr. Bill Pettit when he talked about exactly what you were saying, how he did a thing on COVID, and he was saying that, okay, so what can I do right now today? So he said that, okay, so when I go out, I can wear a mask, I can wash my hands, he distanced himself from his wife because they were a little bit older. And, there was things he saw
Yeah.
to do, but it was just exactly as you said. Each day he focused on the present moment. He focused on what was in front of him, and he saw then what to do. It's like the universe or whatever, just there's cards. They're just going to give you, you're just going to see something about what to do. And I think it's not saying that bad things won't happen. I mean, things will happen, but
Mm.
we have the resources and we have the
Mm.
resilience to deal with
Yeah,
things.
I'll probably talk about my last
Yeah.
Saturday's experience, because it's a really good example of that. So at the moment, I'm in the process, but my husband and I are in the process of buying and selling a house, so that's going on. That's we've had a few ups and downs with that. My husband's self-employed, so his contract is due to end in February, and we should have heard about extending that, but we haven't heard anything, so he could be unemployed in February. And on Saturday morning, he woke up and said, I can't see out of my right eye. So off we went to the hospital. I couldn't go in with him because of COVID, so I was sat in the car park for sort of almost 4 hours, and I had a few tears because I was frightened. Why couldn't he see out of his right eye? And so there was fear, but I know enough to know that it's okay to feel fear. It's okay to be upset and worried, and I felt that. And then it just passed through, and I thought, right, well, I think I'm allowed into the coffee shop. I'll go and get a coffee. So I went and had a coffee, and I felt a bit better. And then my husband came back and he said, they think I've got diabetes and I may have lost my sight, or I might not have. No one can tell me. So I sort of think, right, okay, well, we'll go home. And we've been with that. So I'm in what could be probably termed a bit of a stressful situation at the moment. And I've got all these emotions. I feel so sorry for my husband, and, sad for this whole experience, and there's fear, and it's all there. But it's absolutely fine. In a way, I feel it's a bit obscene because I'm sort of like carrying on being quite perky, and I don't feel the need to make it into a big drama. It is what it is. My husband may get his sight back. He might not. He might get another job. He might not. But all we can do is take the next step. And because I'm aware of these thoughts going around in my mind, and because I know that I don't need to take any notice of them, most of the thoughts that we have are about what I should have done in the past and what I'm going to do in the future. And because those aren't there so much anymore, I'm just living more in the present. At the moment, all I can do is talk to you on a podcast, make my husband a cup of tea, get on to the estate agent to see how the house move's doing. That's all I can do at the moment. And that's absolutely fine. And then in the next moment, I might need to make sure he gets onto the hospital to get an appointment. That's all I can do. And I just want people to know that there is such peace in that. I am not lying awake at night thinking, if he never gets a job, what if he can't ever drive again? They're there sometimes, but they're not really there. There's no emotional attachment to those thoughts anymore. I just really want people to know that we don't have to be a victim to our circumstances. Last night, my husband, my daughter and I, we had a really lovely evening. We just sat together and we chatted and we laughed. And, I said to my husband, might need to get a dog now then again. A blind dog. We take the mick out of it because life is funny, life is tough, life is hard. It's all of those things. Yeah. And we can be at peace with all of it. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but then neither does anyone else. Neither does the eye specialist. We have to. And I trust that that my husband's got the resilience that's required. I trust that I have, and that it will happen as it happens.
And there's another reason why you're talking to me, because the majority of my work is reversing type 2 diabetes.
Yeah,
my clients.
Yeah.
And our amazing Australian of the Year is an ophthalmologist, and he's been very vocal on, all of this and getting the dietary guidelines changed, and, sharing that, there's a lot that we can see and a lot we can do with lifestyle around that.
But the funny thing is, Tracy, that I've sort of bought books on diabetes prevention and cure over the last 6 months, because in the back of my mind, it just seemed a good idea. He's never wanted to go to the doctor, refused. Apparently he's had this potentially for a long time, but now he's on a meat and a little bit of, little bit of meat, little bit of veg, carbs out. I've got this wonderful book, Dr. Michael Molesley, who's sort of a big figure in the UK. About
he did the talk with
wow.
last week with the Australian of the Year.
Yeah.
They did a big talk together. Yeah.
So I know that my husband, he's going to lose 2 stone in 2 months, from this book. That's doable. Once my husband's committed, he knows it's reversible. He knows that there is stuff that we can do. The eyesight may or may not resolve itself, but we can do something. And so that's the next step that we take. We cut out all the rubbish from our diet, we get him out walking again. There's action to be taken.
One day at a time. Wonderful. Well, I'd love you just to give any other, because I want people to buy your book. So what could you sum it up? How could you sum it up nicely so someone, could really see there's so much to be, had by reading this beautiful book?
Yeah, okay. What I wanted it to be about, and what I hope I've achieved, I wanted it to be a sort of light-hearted approach to this understanding, an introduction. So if people are watching and they haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, this is a good introduction. That's what I want it to be. You're not going to get bogged down in science. I want it to be, and I hope it is, you are chatting to a good friend, me. I'm talking to you about this understanding. And so if you want to see more in a really easy, short way, this is the book for you. And there's no preaching. It's lighthearted. It's us curling up together and having a chat on the sofa. And it's not the beginning and the end. It's a starting point for you. But if you're stressed, and particularly if you're a midlife woman, because I think there's a lot that goes on at midlife that can strike people into that sort of stress, I just want you to realize that you do not have to be a victim to that. Midlife women, we've got through a lot of things in our lives, all of us, whatever background you have. You haven't got to 40 and 50 without being through stuff. But actually, you had the potential to live your life in a much more lighthearted way, more joyous way. And that's what I want people to get out of this book as well, that there is hope and that life can be so much more amazing than we ever thought it could be. That's what I'd say. And
I see the potential too, and I think that's an absolutely lovely way to sum it up. I bought Dawn's book. I've got Dawn's book. I bought it on Kindle because I wanted to have it quickly. But you can buy it through anywhere, and
It's on
I'm going to have
Amazon actually at the moment. So
yeah. And I will have all the links below for you to be able to do that, and also to get in touch with Dawn. And as I think, I think the more curious we are and the more we start to challenge what we think, the more we will see. And, just one step, just take, sometimes even just taking that one step can be quite scary, but it is only one step we need to take, because as you have shown, the next step will be revealed and we will know, what to do next.
And the last thing I'd really like to say is that it's an easy process. It's not something you have to work out through gritted teeth. It happens naturally. It's like just noticing a new color around you or seeing something different in the room. It's just something that you do easily. There is no effort required. So you're not going to need to read my book and then use your willpower. It just happens naturally.
No, that's so true. That's so true. Yeah. And if you are, then, you've just got a bit more to see, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
It is that mind kicking in as it's used to do, wanting to have that intellectual, instruction booklet.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to throw it all away. I never thought I would throw it away and just live my life like this.
Yeah.
With my business as well, it's very similar to the way that you do yours. And I just can't tell you the opportunities and the things that have presented themselves to me. And, 3 years ago, I would have said, oh, no, I can't do that. Or,
Yeah.
no, that's not, but, you just see that you will give it a go and it'll happen the way it happens. And there's no rules around how that has to happen.
No. And let's face it, the world needs us all living in this way and expressing who we are and sharing who we are and then just enjoying life, because, one person changes, that changes the whole family around them and their whole connections. It has an impact. It ripples out. So it's beautiful.
It does. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today. I really appreciate your time. And it does feel like I have been sitting next to you on a comfy couch and enjoying the conversation. And one day maybe we'll be in the same country and we can have a real coffee together.
Thank you so
all
much.
the best, Dawn, and I can't wait to just keep connecting. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you.